Hello, Internet, and welcome to today's episode of Always Right with Jeff and Steven. I am Jeff, that is Steven, and today we have got a lot of things to talk about. We did an episode last week on the rise of crime in America
Mhm.
and how the rule of law is kind of in the crapper right now. And I got bad news. It does not seem that anything is getting better. But before we get into it, Stephen, what's going on with you this week?
Man, busy week as usual. Can't sit still. Always got to have something going on. But it looks like it's been a good past week for the most part. Got a lot accomplished. Um, Ended hunting season. For those of you who don't know, we're in Mississippi, and hunting season by and large ends the 31st. And so this was the last weekend to get any hunts in. And so it is what it is there. Now we got to go to the miserable, cold parts of winter. But last week, before we get into this first story here, last week I mentioned that the Atlanta PD and all them they could have stopped all of the rioting and whatnot that happened in Atlanta if they just go in and bust some skulls. And apparently there were 5 police officers who took my plea literally in the Memphis area. So you want to tell us about this story?
Yeah, so before we get I'm sure many have heard about this story. First of all, there are a couple things I want to mention. Firstly, I have not seen the video of the altercation with Tyre Nichols and the police. I hear that it's pretty graphic, and that the firing and charging of the 5 police involved is pretty justified. That's my gathering of the situation. I know that it happened during a traffic stop. He apparently ran away from the policeman, and they caught up to him. There was an altercation. He was sent to the hospital and died of sustained wounds 3 days later. The altercation happened on
Yeah,
the
so
7th.
let's
He
give
died on the
the
10th.
yeah. Let's give the facts of the case. He was pulled over. It was a traffic stop for reckless driving. I believe it may have been careless
Hmm.
driving,
It
but it
was
was some kind
reckless.
of driving charge on the 7th. Reckless
Right.
driving on the 7th. During the stop, it says Nichols was beaten. Unlike Jeff, I did watch all the videos, and we will talk about why we're not going to show the videos on this program here in a bit. But there was a foot race. They got him cuffed eventually and took him to the hospital for injury sustained during the scuffle. All 5 officers involved have been discharged from the Memphis Police Department, and they are under criminal indictment, including second-degree murder charges. Um, I don't feel like it should be said, but it has to be said. Tyree was, I'm gonna say Tyree. I don't know. I haven't seen news reports. I'm gonna say Tyree because
I
I've
haven't heard
taught
it
students
said,
whose
so that might be
names
right.
yeah, I've taught students whose name was spelled that way and it was pronounced Tyree. So Tyree Nichols um, was a black man. All 5 of these authors are black men. Like I said, that shouldn't have to be said, but it has to be said in today's society. And some people have taken it so far to say it's white supremacy, even though all 5 officers were black. I'm pretty sure it was CNN that put out a headline talking about how they were influenced with white supremacy, and that's why they beat this man to death. So, Jeff, if you could find that and look that up, that's weird. Um, so all 5 officers were hired directly to the police department without going through the standard testing process because they lowered their standards of hiring after they were having a police shortage. If you watch the footage, you can tell that they didn't go through all the training they were supposed to. Let's just say there was some heavy and labored breathing going on from these fairly rotund individuals. The Memphis PD chief, Sherelle Davis, announced on Thursday, January 26th, that they would be releasing camera footage of the confrontation. The footage was scheduled to come out Friday evening, and it did. Unlike Jeff, I watched it, and so I'm going to give you my impressions. Um, I saw all 5 camera angles that they released. I'm still wanting more. Uh, they they did not release the footage, the dash cam footage of Tyree's driving that led him to being pulled over. So I want to know why they actually pulled him over. You know, the videos that I saw, they were already trying to get him out of the vehicle. You know, in my experience, when being pulled over, you know, you put your hands on the wheel, cop comes up, asks for your driver's license, insurance, so on and so forth. You provide them the documentation, and you go about getting your ticket. The camera footage that they showed, that must have already gone down, and it was a third officer coming onto the scene, and the other officers were screaming all kinds of obscenities at this man. That's why we're not showing this video. We do not curse at all, especially on this video, on this production, and we certainly don't take the Lord's name in vain. And it is just all over the place in that video. So many MFN and GDs and just vile language. So we're not gonna air those. They are available. Go watch them if you want to know more about this case. But third officer approaches. They're trying to pull the man out of the vehicle. They're trying to arrest him, and he's not really complying, but complying at the same time. Like, they tell him to get on the ground. He gets on the ground. He's very hesitant. He looks scared from the get-go. Just my initial impressions. He looks scared. They're trying to cuff him, and he won't give them his hands to be cuffed. Now, I've been cuffed. Not because, well, that's anyway. I've been cuffed. It's not a comfortable experience, but I want to know what led up to that point, and that's the information that hasn't been released so far. This program, Jeff and I, we support the blue. We really do, and just about as much as you can support the blue. And this was bad. That's the best thing I can say about it. So they tried to tase him in order to cuff him, and so it wasn't a body taser; it was a shoot taser. And so they back away so somebody can shoot a taser at him, and they do that, and he takes his hoodie off because those barbs only go so deep, and then he takes off, and that's when the foot chase happens. The officers that were involved, some of them pursued, some of them didn't. Others were called. He was taken to the ground. They pulled out. We used to call them billy clubs. What do they call them now? Batons?
Nightsticks.
Nightsticks, batons, whatever it was. They pulled those out to try to get him to put his hands behind his back. They had his hands. They had him by the wrist and the hands, but he wouldn't put his hands behind his back in order to be cuffed. And so they just took out their batons, and you could hear them. I'm gonna break your MF and arm if you don't roll. And they're waylaying on the dude.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a while, but they eventually get him cuffed. I will tell you, there are some heinous cheap shots after he is handcuffed. Like, he's handcuffed, laying on the ground. It takes him a long time to get him handcuffed. He's handcuffed, laying on the ground, and you can see two officers come and kick him while he's down. One kicks him square in the face. Another one kicks him right in the ribs. You know, I'm not an MD, but you can kick somebody in the ribs and kill them.
Yeah. So there's obviously, yeah. There's obviously some thuggish behavior going on here that is not. I mean, there's some problems there for sure. I kind of want to get past the facts of the actual case and to the deeper narrative. So that's sort of the theme of today's show. Here's what actually happened. That's what, as conservatives, we get very bogged down in facts. We are very concerned with intellectual honesty and making sure we understand all the facts so that we can make an informed decision that aligns with the way we see the world. That's actually not how things get done in politics. Very rarely do you ever convince somebody of the facts of your argument and you come to an amicable agreement about who's right and who's wrong. There's tactics and information is used and manipulated in order to accomplish goals. That's how politics is done, and this is ultimately a political commentary show. So I say all of that to get to what I want to discuss about this case, and that is how it was released, how information for it was released. So I put in the notes, and Stephen mentioned here that this all occurred. He died on January 10th. That was more than 2 weeks ago. This all occurred over 2 weeks ago, but we are just now getting information this week about how bad the video was. About and we are they delayed releasing the video until Friday night. Why? Why would someone do that? I mean, if the goal is to inform the public and report the facts of the case, then you do that.
Mhm.
But we didn't. We waited. We put theoretically had the video 2 weeks ago. Um, but we waited until it could be reviewed by a PR department, I'm sure. And then the chief and the governing officials in Memphis have made statements about how bad it is, and we are delaying the release of it until Friday night. My belief, and something that is not original to me, I watched analysis of this and I agree with it, is that this was done purposefully to stoke, um, if not another riot, then some form of organized protest. And I think this is obvious.
And see, here's the thing. Yeah, you have to give time for the protesters and the agitators to be organized, because as much as people don't want to say it, they are organized. I mean, you look at what happened in Atlanta last weekend. Almost all of those arrests, those people weren't from Atlanta.
I want you to look at the picture in
Yeah.
front of you. What do those signs say? They say justice for Tyree Nichols. These were not made after the video was released.
No.
These signs were not made willy-nilly. They were made up to a week in advance. These
Mhm.
protests happened across the country, not just in Memphis. They happened in Boston, in Philadelphia, in Seattle, and in Memphis. Now, I do want to point out, and this is a little bit of a bias and just sort of how these things typically go. I expected there to be a riot in Memphis. From what I have heard, there may come more facts later, but it was not necessarily a riot. They did block off I-55, which is a major
Yeah.
interstate in
They
Memphis.
blocked the I-55 bridge going from Memphis to going from Tennessee to Arkansas, which,
Yeah,
like you said, that's a major corridor. And
right.
so, protesters stood on the bridge to block the bridge, but there wasn't,
It wasn't
destruction of
necessarily
downtown, which
it wasn't
yeah,
necessarily like Atlanta was last week. New York did have some of that in response to, I mean, in this protest, um, destroying
I'm curious how many people
cars in
jet
Times
set
Square.
to those destinations. Yeah, I wonder how many of them jet set to those destinations just so they can be a part of the riots
They're
and
organized and
the upheaval.
they are funded by
Something.
some of the same people that fund the Democratic National Convention. I read a report on this in response to Atlanta. Like some of the groups that fund these
Mm,
organizations, they also fund Black Lives Matter and DNC operations. Um, like they are. This is all intentional. The
mhm.
governing body of Memphis, they hyped this up. They waited to release the video until Friday night, and they did all of this for a purpose. And so you see how there's like, yes, the facts of the case are important to know, and we need to come to our own, honest conclusions about that. And obviously,
Yeah.
that's why I also put in the notes about how they were not hired under the same standards that police typically are hired. Even with the
Mm-mm.
lowering of the standards, I think these particular ones and probably some others were sort of rushed through the process and not
Mm.
trained properly. And it's not just like you talked about, it's not just a lack of policemen that gaps that need to be filled. It's also an effort to diversify your police department arbitrarily.
Yes. Yeah, they
Um,
will they will
th-
they will rush people through just so, because I mean the majority of Memphis police force is black. The majority of Baltimore police force is black. Like a lot of these metropolitan areas that are majority black, uh, ma- uh, Detroit, and what did I just say? Baltimore and Memphis, that their police forces are primarily black. But what, like you said, what happens is they'll look at the people they have on their force and go, "Oh, we're not black enough to represent our community, so we've got to we got to lower standards. We got to do this or that just to have more diversity."
Right. It was,
And all 5 of these people were rushed through, and clearly that was bad.
yeah. This is I mean, and of course, and we're not even. Stephen mentioned it, but we're not really talking about it because, of course, they did. They announced that it's
Mhm.
white supremacy. 5 black
I
cops
mean,
kill a black
immediately. I mean,
man, and it's
I
white
was waiting
supremacy.
on it.
I
I
was
was
like,
waiting on it. I was waiting for that tweet, and sure enough, it came out. It was
but
white
these
supremacy has
yeah,
infiltrated everything.
these particular policemen were hired in the pursuit of equity. This was an
Yeah,
affirmative action decision.
yeah,
This was, I mean, it was the opposite of white supremacy that got these people hired.
yeah. Standards
So
are good. Hold to standards. Don't lower standards just to meet a certain quota.
yeah,
Standards are good. Use them.
so I don't know, like be mindful of and really this was a story for the left to rile up the left. It's not really
Hmm.
something that was intended to rile up the right. Um, but be aware of what's going on, and we're there's going to be manipulation that you'll be able to see in each of these stories that we're going to discuss today. Um, so that is what we have to say about Memphis. Any final points, Stephen?
No, no, I think we should go ahead and go to the next story. And this one too involves police, and this one too has body cam, and this one we're actually going to show the body cam. So, if you remember correctly, a few months ago, Paul Pelosi, who was the husband of then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, was assaulted in his home, and we never got the facts in order or understood what was going on at all. But on October 28th, David DePape, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but I'm rolling with it, entered the
Mhm.
home of then Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi armed with a hammer. When police arrived on scene, they were met at the door by her husband, Paul, holding a drink in one hand, holding on to the hammer with the assailant in the other hand, wearing only his shirt and his underbreeches. Okay. DePape has been in the U.S. since 2008. He is here illegally, according to government records. He overstayed a temporary visitor visa and is here illegally. Um, I don't know if you know this, but most people who are in the country illegally have overstayed their visas. That is something that needs to be fixed by our Homeland Security. Conspiracy theories abounded whenever this came out because we weren't sure how this happened. They talked about how if he wasn't let in the house, how was the glass broken this way? By the way, they also released the footage. We're not going to show it, but they also released the footage of him breaking into the house. He indeed broke into the house. Conspiracy theories about him being a known nudist and possibly soliciting the speaker's husband for sex were abound. It was a weird time in social commentary, to say the least.
But
But
the
then now they have
running
released the footage.
right and just as a reminder, the running narrative on the left was that this was done because of the right's radicalization
Mhm.
across the country that invites physical attacks against Democrat politicians. Nancy Pelosi was
Well,
on
Jeff,
TV.
and
It
if
was
you
like,
know
"This is,
anything,
yeah." San Francisco is a big, big right wing base in San Francisco.
if you know anything, San Francisco is not only a big right wing base, but illegal aliens are like the core of the right's viewership. Like people who are illegal aliens love the right, and they're really listening to everything that they say so that they can go do what the right wants. So yeah, that doesn't work. But they released the camera footage, and I watched it. It's odd. It is it's weird. Like Jeff hasn't watched it yet, have you?
No, I have not.
All right,
But
so
yeah,
audience, you're going to get a first take with Jeff here. I want Jeff's impression of this. Go.
okay. There's no sound in the first few seconds, but it picks up. There it
That's
goes.
fine.
Yeah, definitely don't want all of here. I definitely don't want all of here. Hello.
somebody's filming. So not only do they have the body
Yes.
camera, somebody's filming. Did you see that?
It said 2620, right? No, 2640. Oh, 40. Yeah, it literally said in there. Hi,
guys.
how you doing?
Oh yeah.
What's going on, man?
Everything's good.
Hi. Drop the hammer.
Nope. Hey.
What is going on right
I'm
now?
not getting an answer on calls.
Bro,
Oh shit!
Calls in the area that someone in
I got him, Michael.
All right, you can stop it now.
Ever 14 ever send back up code 3.
Oh, she's unconscious.
Code 3 back up. 2-6
Give me your fucking hand.
units.
All right.
That's wild. It's
Yeah.
wild.
That's well, and it is weird. But
It's
I think
weird, man.
I think the explanation of what happened here is fairly simple.
Yeah.
If you know anything about the state of California currently, you know that the homeless and insane problem is a very, very large problem.
Mhm.
This man broke into, I mean, maybe it happened to be the Speaker of the House's home. Maybe that was specifically a target of his. I don't
Paul
know about
Pelosi
that.
said on the police calls that he was looking for his wife Nancy. I mean, I will say that. Like, if
Okay.
you the transcripts have been released, he was looking for Nancy,
And he's
she
got
wasn't
access
at home
to.
that night.
He could have access to TV. I mean, but this is an insane person that broke into a
It's
home
weird.
with a hammer and seemingly content to do some sort of harm. Who knows what his end goal was there. And he was confronted by a trophy husband. Paul Pelosi doesn't strike me as a man of much use, who could not be bothered to drop his cocktail, but did have the forethought to grab the hammer that the man. Now, I guess the police got
It's
called.
weird.
Police got
Yeah,
called.
so he calls the police. And like on the transcript, he's like, my friend is here, and you can tell
I
there's
can get
duress
that. Like
and whatnot.
he's like we're trying to.
And
keep
so
the
that's why they
insane
show up
person
there like
calm.
the dude's crazy. That's the
Yeah.
problem. Is the dude's
Right.
crazy.
Yeah, we're trying
And-
to keep the
and-
insane person calm while I'm on the phone trying to get the police here. The police arrive. I'm still not letting go of the hammer. And as soon as he lets go of the hammer, the crazy guy attacks. So
That is
I
the
see what happened.
weirdest.
The drink is the
video.
weird part. The drink is the weirdest part to me. Like I would have tried. Maybe he just didn't want to spill it and couldn't get it to a table. But that's still like I'm trying to put both hands on that hammer if I'm Paul.
It's so weird. Like, and it's like, okay, I understand he's in his underwear. It's late at night. He's wearing a t-shirt and underwear. He's getting ready for bed. That's whatever. But the drink in one hand and holding on to the hammer with the other, and it goes from 0 to 100 fast. If y'all want to know why cops are so quick to shoot, Paul Pelosi almost died. Like that video that you just saw almost killed him.
He was unconscious, and that was one blow.
One blow with a hammer, yeah.
Seemingly more after when the camera was out of focus, but that's rough. But
That's
the real,
weird.
but and again, we want to go over the manipulative part of this.
That's right.
They rate like, okay, sure, a crazy guy shows up to do harm to the Democrat Speaker of the House.
Yeah, that's what
there is no evidence that is he is the result of right-wing radicalization. More likely, he is the result of insane San Franciscan policies regarding homelessness and the mentally disturbed. They don't put those people away like they should.
And the fact that California is a sanctuary state, that San Francisco has been a sanctuary city forever, and they're a sanctuary state. And so If he were in any other state, it would have been easy to deport him and send him back to his home country, but not in San Francisco.
And what was
So
what was
there's a lot of problems here, and they're trying to manipulate the narrative to say, "Oh, he was radicalized by far right." No, he's a crazy person. He's a crazy person. It's not the right's fault.
And then there's the fact that the video was held on to. Like
For
the
how
video was
long?
not released for months, and it was released after the story fell out of popularity, like it fell out of the media on purpose. They do that on purpose because they don't want you to watch this and start questioning what's going on in San Francisco.
Mhm.
Because that's not good for everything, even the Speaker of the House's husband it is there to serve the narrative.
Mhm.
Everything can be sacrificed for the narrative. Everything is done in service to the narrative. And they are consistent on it, man. So this is sort of the other way. We talked about Memphis, how they strategically release information and how they prop information up to get a desired result. This is how when things come out that they like, they strategically suppress, which happens quite a lot as well. We're going to talk about Project Veritas in a little while and kind of what they're. I mean, it's some of the same stuff. But before we can move on to Project Veritas, it has to be my. Gosh, am I on a weekly basis now? My anger at the Republican Party segment.
Yeah.
And really, I think that my ire is spread out across these people. I know you vote Republican. If you're watching this show, more than likely, I vote Republican when I do vote. These people have such contempt for you. They don't like. There was a video that came out of a senator from Mississippi, Roger Wicker, talking about how we needed to work with the Biden administration to more quickly get better and stronger equipment to Ukraine. Think about that for a second. Roger Wicker, a senator from Mississippi, talks about how we need to work with the Biden administration to spend more money on military equipment to get it to Ukraine. Why might our senator do that? Is it because he's very supportive of Ukraine? What company has a pretty decent operation in the state of Mississippi that might be
Tell us,
involved?
Jeff.
Lockheed Martin.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Roger Wicker might have some stock in Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or any of these other contractors that work with the military? That these people do not care about you; they care about their own pocketbooks. And the war in Ukraine is making a lot of senators, both Republican and Democrat, very rich.
Yep. I mean, how can these people go into office as paupers and then they make, $125,000, $140,000 a year and leave office multimillionaires?
Yeah, I mean, like
how does that happen?
If I have stock in Lockheed Martin and then I have I do, full disclosure, but then I have the ability to write checks to Lockheed Martin with someone else's money. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Right? Like Roger Wicker's not writing personal checks to Lockheed Martin and enriching himself. He's writing checks with your money and enriching himself. I'm sorry, that's not one of the stories that I had listed for today. It just made me.
No, go to the story.
All right, so the vote for the next RNC chair was this past week. Now, the RNC is the Republican National Convention, and it is the overarching body that all your Republican representatives are a member, like a part of. The RNC's job is to get Republicans elected. Theoretically, that's their job. They are not very good at it. here lately. And here lately, they've had one chairman in common, and that is Ronna
Mhm.
McDaniel. Ronna McDaniel was elected to be RNC chairman in 2017. She was reelected to her fourth term this past week. That is, I think there's just one person that's had a longer run than she has. And another thing that we need to know about Ronna McDaniel is as establishment as people come.
What do
She
you
has
mean she's establishment?
she has overseen the horrendous performance in the 2020 and the 2022 elections. I don't even remember how 2018 went for us. Was it good? I mean,
Decent,
it
better
might.
than average.
Okay, all right. But we severely underperformed in 2020 and 2022.
2020 was a mess.
Yeah.
2022 we underperformed, but 2020 was a mess.
And that was all under Ronna McDaniel's leadership. Ronna McDaniel also happens to be, her maiden name is Romney. She is the niece of Mitt Romney.
All right, Jeff, I feel like you need to put your prejudices out there about having royalty in the United States. I think that needs to be a part of this segment.
I think if you serve in an office at the level of governor, and above, an executive office that's pretty high up, you should be banished from you and your immediate family should be banished from the country for like a decade.
Banished from the country or from serving in the country?
The country.
So you
I don't
think
want you
someone should
making
serve
deals
and
in
then
my.
have to leave the country?
I don't want you making deals in my country after you leave office.
So all
theoretically, you made a lot of money in service. You can go live somewhere nice.
In Jeff's world, after you serve the country, you have to leave it.
You can go live in one of those countries you hobnobbed with to screw us over. I'm sure Afghanistan would treat Joe Biden very well.
Yeah, real well.
So Ronna McDaniel got reelected to the RNC chairmanship. Her chief opponent was Harmeet Dillon. Harmeet Dillon is an Indian conservative. She was the grassroots candidate. Harmeet Dillon is a lawyer. She served in the Trump administration as legal counsel. And she also was the head lawyer in the case of Daily Wire versus the Biden administration, back when the Biden administration was trying to force private companies to have their employees vaccinated. The Daily Wire
when
led
they
the
came
charge.
out with the OSHA mandate. Yeah.
Right. The Daily Wire led the charge on getting that overturned, and they won. That was primarily due to the work of Harmeet Dillon.
So she served in the Trump administration. She overturned significant overreach from the federal government. I mean, she sounds like a rock star. I mean, that OSHA mandate was awful. Yeah, for those of you who don't remember, the Biden administration came out with the OSHA mandate saying that anyone, if they had over 100 employers, was that correct? Employees, if they had over 100 employees, they had to have them vaccinated. And the Daily Wire sued them and won the lawsuit and got that overturned. That's a pretty big deal. So certainly she got Trump's endorsement for RNC chair, right?
Absolutely not. No, Trump, as much of an outsider as Trump started as, he has hobnobbed with the establishment GOP for some time now. This is actually the second time that he has saved the political career of a Romney. He helped Mitt Romney reinvigorate his political career back when he was president. Well, I think he was just running for president at the time. So Trump has used his coattails to help a lot of establishment figures, and it has pissed some of his base off, especially now. Yeah. There were surveys that said 90% of Republican voters wanted a change in the chairmanship. 90%. Yeah. Everybody who has a vote in the RNC, basically over half of them decided that they didn't care about that, and they were going to vote for Ronna Romney again. So Romney got and her name is McDaniel, but I'm using Romney as a derogatory term.
You should. She is a Romney.
She got yes, that's her maiden name. She got 111 votes to Harmeet's 54 votes. That's a pretty good showing for a grassroots candidate of some note. Mike Lindell, the My Pillow CEO guy, got 4 votes.
Yeah.
So he was apparently in the running too. But 111 to 54. Trump came out and congratulated her and said that now they needed to stop the Democrats from stealing elections. Mr. Trump, if you believe that the Democrats stole the 2020 election, I have news for you about who was in charge of the Republican National Convention during that election.
That's right. That's right. Their sole job of the RNC is to get Republicans elected. Like when I was first thinking about this story, I was thinking, why does this matter? No one knows who this person is. It's because this person has a job, and that job is to get conservatives elected. Get people who elected who are going to represent the conservative Republican base of this country. And Ronna McDaniel has not done that. She has been a Romney for all intents and purposes. And so when I started thinking about it more, I started to get a little bit more upset about it. So, yeah, I mean, I can't, Trump is becoming an establishment figure, which that's going to be to his discredit. And that's going to help someone like DeSantis, who's still relatively young in the game of politics. But I was really shocked when I found out that Trump didn't back someone who was in his own executive office.
That's actually not
camp.
not a rarity. Trump does. I would have hated to work for the Trump admin. Trump does not care about anybody who works for him. I will have.
It's like he treats it like he's still on The Apprentice. It's
right.
crazy.
And we have a lot of people who like Trump. I liked what he did as president by and large, but the way he treats people who served in his administration, there is no sort of loyalty there. He will. It is all self-interest all the way down.
He will scapegoat you real quick.
He felt like he felt like the establishment candidate was the way to go this time. He is setting himself up to be the establishment guy in 2024. Yeah.
Which is crazy because that's not how he ran. He was the outside
definitely
guy,
not
right?
how he ran.
And now he's the establishment guy. I guess he thinks he can fool his original base into thinking.
And that's that's really the story here is not so much who was. I mean, that is a big story. Who was elected to the RNC? There are people like Tucker Carlson, Charlie Kirk, coming out against this and saying, "Look, you guys might need to be done with the RNC. No more money. No more no more donations. We're they do not care about you." And they're doing a horrible job. So I get it if they're good at it. I understand, but they're not.
I mean, the Democrats held the Senate. We barely got. We have what, a 5-seat majority in the House. Like, they're not doing their job. So stop giving them money. It's that simple. Right. I donated to the RNC once, and that'll never. That I'm not gonna say that won't happen again. But under its current direction, I will not donate to the RNC.
Yeah,
just because they're not doing their job. You get rewarded when you do a job. Do you tip a waitress who sucks? Do you tip a waitress who only brings you your food, never gets you a refill, and never asks if you can do anything? No, you don't, because they suck at their job. Well, don't tip the RNC. Don't give them money. They suck at their job.
And the Trump factor here is probably the biggest factor, because there are a lot of people who might even consider themselves Trump loyalists that are coming out against this. Not just this, but the very same day that he congratulated Harmeet Dillon on her victory in that race, he had Lindsey Graham come out and endorse him for 2024. Yeah, that big sought after Lindsey Graham endorsement.
I'm
Okay,
not
but
mad at Lindsey, but does it get more
Lindsey Graham
establishment than
is
Lindsey Graham?
yeah, Lindsey Graham is the establishment. Like he is
He is the guy for the establishment.
this is person John McCain described as his best friend. Like when and there are some people who are still defending Trump in all of this. A lot of people think he's playing 4D chess. I don't know. I can't take
I'm
you
sick
people
of that
seriously.
argument. I am
I
sick
can't
of
take you
that
people
argument.
seriously. Donald Trump does not know what 4D chess is. He doesn't know what 2D chess is. He did that because he doesn't care about it. Donald Trump
This is the
is
same man
doing
who
what
bragged about writing more books than he read. I mean,
Right.
he's not playing 4G chess.
Donald Trump is doing what suits him and his needs in the moment. Like what there is no functional difference between Lindsey Graham and Joe Biden. But
No,
Joe
they're both
but
establishment as it gets.
yeah. But Joe Biden is the enemy because he doesn't kiss Donald Trump's feet, and Lindsey Graham does. That's what's going on here. And so when you describe yourself as a Trump loyalist, which a lot of people do, I think that's kind of idol worshipy, and I don't care for it.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
a lot of people do. They start talking about how all of these people who are going against what Trump wants, they're not loyal enough. Okay. First of all, I don't have to be loyalty to a politician in America. It's my right.
No.
But what are you loyal to? Are you loyal to Trump? Or are you loyal to the America First pledge that he made that I can actually understand that made him so popular? Because the establishment is not America First.
Yeah.
And I've read some analysis on Twitter that describe this as America First versus MAGA. They are not the same. MAGA is Trump's brand, and America First is a policy position.
Yeah.
And
you're 100% correct.
And the establishment is not America First. All of this stuff about Ukraine and sending money to Ukraine. How is let Ukraine fight a proxy war on our behalf America First?
Do you want to answer that question? No, I understand what you're saying. I'm not mad at the war in Ukraine. I'm mad at the blank checks. I'm not okay with sending blank checks.
Yeah.
I'm okay with decimating Russia's military capability through Ukraine.
And that's an argument. Yeah, and that's an argument. I'm not isolationist.
But we're sending blank checks over there. And like you said, that's not an American First agenda. The American First agenda needs to be, this is why we are doing what we are doing. Here's what we need in order to make this conflict stop. None of those things are being laid out. It's not American First. It's just, So that's a good point.
The war in Ukraine is
a
virtue thing now. The war in Ukraine is a virtue thing now. People send over this money to appear virtuous, and because it's not their money, they don't care. So
I mean, this again continues the thread of you're being manipulated. Now you're being manipulated by your own party, supposedly, if you call yourself a conservative. Ronna McDaniel has not performed in the past two election cycles. You need to treat her like a coach who has had 2 bad seasons. Let her go. You had 1 good season, 2 bad seasons. Cut. Let's get out of here.
And they
let's get someone else.
It does make me start to question the actual goal. Like I don't think the goal is to win elections and use power, because Republicans never use power. I think the goal is to protect those that are already established. Continue to line the pocketbooks.
6 months ago, I might have pushed back, but the way this past election turned out and the way that I saw the party treat certain candidates, I'm starting to see that more. The
Republican Party, the Republican Party does not want to get new blood. No. They want to protect the old guard. They want to maybe get some of their friends elected that aren't in power yet, but they do not want new and invigorating and radical.
If they did, they wouldn't have pushed through the vote before the seat change in December.
Right. And Harmeet Dillon.
Right. I mean, that's just proof.
Right. And Harmeet Dillon would have pushed for new and passionate and radical.
Yeah.
So this was
Well,
a hit
and for
job.
those of y'all who aren't students of history, this is what leads to a third party candidate that splits a party. These are the kind of actions that lead to a third party that will not do well, that will split the conservative base, and will guarantee Democrats wins in perpetuity. Like that's these are the kind of actions that lead to that. And so the Republican Party needs to get their junk together. That's ridiculous.
Well, and the third party is never like it's not that some radical on the right decides that he's sick of the Republican Party and he decides to run third party like a libertarian would. That's not really how it happens. What happens is our guy gets the nomination, and then one of the establishment hacks decides to run third party because he would rather see our side lose
That's it.
than have an actual a actual conservative. This is what Theodore Roosevelt did.
That's
It wasn't
that's
that
bull moose right
it
there.
wasn't that he was. It wasn't that the Republican candidate was too wishy-washy. It was because he was too radical.
Mm-hmm.
And Theodore Roosevelt was the wishy-washy one.
Yeah. So these are the kind of actions that will affect us. It's not if, it is a matter of when. It will affect us, and it will affect us negatively. The RNC and Republicans, by and large, need to get the crap together. It's ridiculous. People will see through your manipulations. I mean, your sins will find you out. You will reap what you sow. However many scriptures I need to put in there to prove it to y'all that it's not going to work for you. So elect who the people want. We are a representative republic. Elect who the people want. Stop trying to play puppet master.
And more dangerously, what it's going to lead to, more likely than even a third party, is an active authoritarian. That's what's going to happen. We're going to have a Caesar come up.
Oh. Yeah. Well, we'll see. Well, speaking of manipulation, you want to get to this last story?
All right. So this is actually, I mean, the Memphis stuff is important to talk about, but I actually think this is probably the biggest story of the week. People do not, just judging by our metrics, people do not like when we talk about the vaccine. They kind of want to forget it. But you really need to be aware.
Huge.
You need to be aware of what, like, I do not like pharmaceutical companies. I don't like prescription drugs. These companies are evil, and there's some shady crap going on. So we're going to look at this newest thing from Project Veritas. This is someone from Project Veritas going undercover to interview someone who works at Pfizer.
There is a controversial video making the rounds on social media, calling into question the power of Big Pharma. It's purportedly taken by an undercover journalist and appears to show an alleged Pfizer executive claiming the drug maker is considering a strategy to create COVID mutations in its own labs.
Pfizer ultimately is thinking about mutating COVID?
Well, that is not what we say to the public. No, don't tell anyone this. You gotta publish, don't tell anyone. You gotta publish, don't tell anyone. Hey, we're exploring, like, no, you know how the virus keeps mutating?
Yeah.
Well, one of the things we're exploring is, like, why don't we just mutate it ourselves so we can focus on, we can create actively develop new vaccines, right? So we have to do that. If we're gonna do that, though, there's a risk of, like, as you could imagine, no one wants to be having a pharma company mutating viruses.
So this is the latest undercover video from Project Veritas, a self-proclaimed journalism enterprise. And in the video, the alleged Pfizer exec refers to the research as, quote, directed evolution, and also calls COVID vaccines a cash cow. In response today, Pfizer saying it does not conduct this type of research and clarifying its process, saying, quote, this work is undertaken once a new variant of concern has been identified by public health authorities. This research provides a way for us to rapidly assess the ability of an existing vaccine to induce antibodies that neutralize a newly identified variant of concern. We then make this data available through peer-reviewed scientific journals and use it as one of the steps to determine whether a vaccine update is required. Now, before the show, I discussed this potential.
All right, so that's basically just of what happened, and we should go ahead and play the other video. So this is what Project Veritas does. They do undercover videos.
Yeah, for those of you who aren't familiar with Project Veritas, the CEO is James O'Keefe. They have various methods. This particular one is this guy was going. He was pretending to go on a date with this guy to get undercover to get him to loosen up and tell him what he wanted to tell. Sometimes they'll infiltrate organizations through hiring and work their way up through employment. Other times they'll use friendship. They use various different methods, but they go through and they make undercover videos. And I know that nowadays this is considered skeevy. You know, we could have talked about Steven Crowder doing this to his friends, but it is skeevy to do it to your friends. It's not skeevy to do it to the enemy. This is what journalism used to be in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. This is what ABC, CNN, this is what they did. And they no longer do it. So Project Veritas and James O'Keefe, which Veritas is just Latin for truth, in case you're wondering, they have taken upon themselves to go and expose a myriad number of terrible people. You know, Planned Parenthood, they got them to admit openly that they were aborting these babies and selling their parts on the market. Yeah. So you can call some conspiracy theories for it, but we're using their words against them. He's gone up against ABC, WAPO, NPR, you name it. He has exposed the worst of the worst. And if you want to know how successful he is, just go look at his Wikipedia page. Go look at Project Veritas's Wikipedia page. It starts off with, well, they're far right and they blah blah. No, he doesn't deceptively cut videos. They cut that video for the news article, but you can go watch the entire conversation uncut.
Right.
So he just lets people hang themselves with their own words. That's what he does.
Project Veritas also released a second video from the same interview. So after the initial interview, where he unknowingly confessed to all of this stuff, this person who works at Pfizer is confronted by James O'Keefe himself, the head of Project Veritas, and he does kind of like the Chris Hansen, like the Dateline deal where he like comes up and says, "What are you doing?" Like and actually tells him what's going on, and this guy does not take it well. So
man, it doesn't go well.
Is this seat taken? You work for Pfizer. My question for you is, why does Pfizer want to hide from the public the fact that they're mutating the COVID viruses?
Is this real life?
It's not, by the way,
Why are you doing
don't
this?
tell anybody.
Someone who's just working in a company to literally help the public. You f***ed up. You really did. Please bring the cops as soon as possible. I'm really very unsafe.
Can you please unlock your door?
No, don't let them leave.
Please unlock the door.
Give me, why is going on here?
Please.
I mean,
So yeah, James O'Keefe says, "How can you do all this horrible stuff?" And and he freaks out.
Dude got
because he got.
Oh yeah. I mean, he knows that. Oh man, why are you doing this?
I'm literally trying to help the public.
We want to tell truth, and you know, truth is the best thing that helps people. And so, yeah, we're being manipulated here. We know we've been manipulated by the virus. Like that's not news to us.
And the facts that it are insinuated in the Project Veritas reporting that Pfizer is doing these things, I 100% believe that, because Pfizer has made a killing off of this.
Well, not just that the fact they've made a killing. All right, so look at Pfizer's track history. They've had to pay the largest lawsuit in the history of ever before they ever developed the COVID-19 vaccine. They had to pay penalties for lies that they've made about other major pharmaceutical products. So it's not unbelievable. And then on top of that, there's no punishment for this. Whenever we did Project Warp Speed to bring the vaccine about, they took all liability and responsibility off the big pharma companies. Congress, your elected officials, made it to where they could not be sued for wrongdoing when it came to the COVID-19 vaccine. I mean, okay, you get myocarditis and die. You can't sue anybody for it. Okay, you have side effects of the vaccine that cause your life to be worse than it was before you got the vaccine. You cannot sue anyone about it. They are completely indemnified of any wrongdoing by the law that Congress made. So whenever you do that, is it so far a stretch to say that, oh, they're mutating things? There's no penalty. and humans work off of incentives. So I have no problem believing that they're doing this.
Yeah. So and you know, I hate to dogpile on him, but that was another Trump thing. You
Yeah.
know, he's made blunders, and it's because he started listening to he stopped listening to his people and started listening to people around him in his inner circle.
I'm not mad about them pouring money into big pharma to get a vaccine going. I'm really not.
Sure.
But you cannot take responsibility away from people, and when you do that, it leads to bad actors. Now, going back to James O'Keefe, that video was awesome. That video was
Yes, very
hilarious.
good.
Yeah, just confronting him. Hey, can I sit here? Hey, so I have these quotes from you, and you can see the look on his face. Again, that was selected from a cut down news article. You can watch the original, and you can watch him
Yeah.
go. You can see the expressions on his face going, "Oh man, I've been caught." And, you know, Pfizer people immediately were like, "Oh well, he doesn't work for Pfizer." Yes, he does. Like the person that was on that video. Let me pull up my notes here. The person who was on that video was. I'm sorry, I had it right here.
Jordan Walker.
Jordan Walker, thank you. Jordan Walker, he divulged that the company has considered mutating COVID-19 through direct evolution. His position, Walker is the Director of Research and Development, Strategic Operations, and mRNA Scientific Planner. So, yeah, he does work for them. The receipts are there to show that he worked for the company. Like they pulled up his company email address. They pulled up all of his information on LinkedIn before they took it down. You can't find him on LinkedIn now, but he has all the receipts from who he was on LinkedIn before all that was taken down. And the worst part of all this is no major news outlets picked it up. It's a solid piece
and that's
of
part of
journalism.
that's the same thing with the Pelosi story. That is the limiting of information, the silencing of information that Project Veritas has had their views manipulated through Google for this as well. Like some people are having trouble searching for this actual story through Google.
And to your point before, this is what leads to authoritarianism. Okay, we have the internet, people. You cannot hide truth anymore. It is out there. People will find it. And when they find Project Veritas, when they find these things that you've been lying about, that you refuse to report about, they will elect someone who is going to do something about it. And it's not the person you want elected. This is how you give rise to an authoritarian. So just let truth speak to our elected officials, to anyone out there. Let the truth be the truth. Don't try to manipulate it. Don't try to change it. News anchors, do your job and report the news. Report what the truth is and let people make their own decisions. Let them draw their own conclusions. You just report the information. And that's what James O'Keefe is doing here. That's what needs to happen. That's how you keep from an authoritarian figure rising.
Yep. Well, I think it's a rainy Sunday here in Cleveland. We had to struggle a little bit to get going, but I think this was a good episode. We ended up on a topic that I'm very passionate about. Think smarter, be more informed, inform yourself, and as much I'm starting to sound like a crackpot. Look for the goal behind the story. What narrative is being promoted and what narrative is being hidden.
I will offset your crackpotness, and I'll say just look for truth, people. That's what you need to do. You need to go out and you need to look for facts, and you need to look for the truth. And the truth is always going to be the best disinfectant. You know, they say sunlight is the best disinfectant. Well, the light is Jesus, and he is indeed the truth, and he is the best disinfectant. So let the truth come out, and everything will be fine. Just speak truth.
Amen. Well, that will be it for us for this week. Please tune in next week, and we will see what this last week in January has in store for us. Hopefully, it'll be something half as interesting as what we discussed today. From both me and Steven, thank you guys for listening, and we will catch you on the next one. Hey, you've just finished listening to an episode of Always Right. If you like what you heard and want to help support the channel, please be sure to like the video and follow us on Facebook or subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please consider rating the podcast 5 stars. And as always, please leave us a comment, whether hateful or glowing, as we appreciate the feedback. Tune in next week for another episode of Always Right with Jeff and Steven.